Okay, greetings and welcome to the Gellies Pan-African Community News Update. Today's date is the 21st of September 2025. Welcome. It's been quite a while. I'm Brother Dr. Toyin Ekpetu. I'm in the studio for review of some of the community-related news from for the last year, actually. I think the last time we spoke, I was going on sabbatical in January 2025. No, 2024. That's right. I thought I'd be back in September 2024. That obviously didn't quite happen. Work became more intensive. It wasn't as much as a sabbatical as I'd hoped. But I'm back. I don't know how long I'm back for. It's a new academic term. So I'm going to try and stick to the same routine of trying to do these during term times every fortnight, every 2 weeks. There's probably going to be some gremlins. This is the first time in a long time since I've done this. Now, let me just double check. I'm flying solo today. Sister Oleander will be back with us in a next program. But right now, it's going to take me a bit of time to watch all the different screens and answer all the comments. Oh, I can see Woody have one. Greetings, Brother 360. Long time. Yes, it is. Thank you for letting us know. And it's also important for us as well. I don't know where you're watching from, whether you're on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, but please interact with us in the chat. I will try and respond to everything as I can. Might give me a bit of time because it's, like I said, it's a little tricky doing this all simultaneously after such a long time. But you're welcome. And of course, you know the usual. Don't forget to subscribe, like, share if you find this useful. Now, I do hope to start back at 6 in general. I'm going to play around with the times. It might be earlier, never later. 6:30 today was just literally because compiling some of the news. We had quite an intensive program, and then we got some amazing information from some of our researchers. I say amazing, some of it was quite tragic. And I just felt, look, we have to share all of this. We've been away for quite a long time. And as you know, we usually start with libations to those that have recently passed and notable anniversary. So that's what I'm going to go straight into. So let me start. Let's see if I can get this going with the first remember. And I'm going to start with that horrendous situation that took place in August 2005. Yes, that's 20 years ago. Can you believe it? Hurricane Katrina. And this is when there was a major flooding that broke what they call the levees, putting 80% of the city of New Orleans under water. And this was probably the first time in a long time that African Americans could see quite clearly what structural racism was doing. I mean, of course, we've been aware of this through enslavement, through colonization, through Jim Crow laws, all these kind of issues. But in this era, it was just seeing how the state left us to die. It was outrageous. The lack of adequate responses led to this severe tragedy. I think this is when we thought Kanye West was a good one, and I think he went on TV saying George Bush don't care about black people. That was his term, I think, as well. And it was people were coming out recognizing that leaving tens of thousands of people trapped without food, water, or electricity was just outrageous, and there was a racial component to it. Now, the government's response at the time was to bring in armed troops to restore order. I don't know if you can imagine that and if you can remember that, but that's what took place. We've seen subsequent fires occurring in California and all around the world. We've seen the humanitarian responses, and we see that when the military comes in, it's to provide relief and aid and evacuation. But at this time, 20 years ago, the government's response was to bring armed troops in. Now, this wouldn't have taken place, so clearly, if the population or the majority of the population who had been affected was racialized as white. The response to the disaster was explicitly racist. And unfortunately, we've seen these responses repeated time and time and time again. And I'm not sure we have confidence that given the same situation 20 years later, the response will be that much better. But, you know, that was, we remember. The next we remember, God, it's one that always broke my heart. It's It was the murder, really, of 4 little girls: Annie Mae Collins, Simphis Wesley, Carol Robertson, and Carol Denise McNair, and 22 others who were also injured on that day when the Ku Klux Klan planted a bomb in a church in Birmingham, Alabama. Now, Spike Lee did an amazing film called, what was it? I think it was just called 4 Little Girls. It's one of those ones that brought me to tears. You know, you go into it not recognizing, kind of like you're so traumatized by this kind of history. And if you haven't seen it, watch it. But we just want to remember and reflect on this situation. It took place on the 15th of September, 1963, and that's why we're reflecting on this anniversary. Now, please bear with me. I'm whizzing through the slides because we have so much to go through, and it's got nothing to do with the level of society. You normally know I spend a lot of time going into the background information and providing you with the social, cultural context at the time. I can't do that today, but please use this program as an opportunity to just do a little bit of research yourself and to look back and learn for yourself. Like I said, there's a documentary by Spike Lee that covers this, and it's really important that the things that I'm going to share with you, that you actually do your own extra research. Don't take my word for anything. I could be a propagandist, I could be lying, I could be making this stuff up. Please don't do that. Take this as a starting point for your own journey into self-empowerment, self-education. So I'm going to go to the next slide, and this is another we remember, and this is actually I suppose it's a positive anniversary in many ways, even though, of course, Senegal's first president, Leopold Senghor, is now an ancestor. But when he was elected, he was one of the first of the independence generation of African leaders. And if we remember, many of them kind of like had one-party states, but Senghor was really famous and known for the fact that he resigned of his own free will. He relinquished power at the age of 74. He did have 20 years in office, but he wasn't overturned. And this move was in keeping with his political principles. He was a Democrat, and he recognized that a lot of work needs to be done to improve the conditions of Senegal at the time. And as happened with Nkrumah, who was overthrown, as we know, they needed a level of stability. People keep forgetting you can't have like slavery and colonial rule, like hundreds of years of this domineering force, and then put in a system where you keep overturning the political institutions every 3 to 4 years. You can't achieve anything like that. So there were some African leaders who came and said, look, we know what you've been reading and hearing about this democratic system, about free elections, and we agree with these principles. But right now, let us lay the ground rules. And of course, this approach, which was the right approach, was constantly undermined by those same colonial powers who were interfering and assassinating and putting in like turncoats and traitors to undermine African independence during that anti-colonial period. But we want to remember him because he wasn't just a political leader. He was an African intellectual. He was one of the founders of the Negritude movement, which really produced a vital cultural base for the emancipation of African people all over the world. So again, we remember. There's much more I could say about him, and it was a great moment of that time, and we often forget about that. Okay, we remember. This is our elder, Alfred Garner, and he was one of Britain's last surviving passengers on the Windrush. Now, he has passed away at the age of 98. He made his journey all those years ago, and he was fondly known for breaking down racial barriers. Now, this is, you've got to remember, 1948 was, I say it was, things have changed. It was a long time ago. A lot of what was happening to us then is now starting to reoccur with us now. So in 1948, our elder Alfred became one of the founding members of the city's famed Caribbean Cricket Club. Now, this was a focal point for the city's African Caribbean community in the 1950s and 60s. Today, the club is the longest running African heritage-led organisation in Leeds and the oldest of its type in the UK. So we remember him. He made it to 98, which is what they say, good innings. Yeah, he's now joined the ancestors. Another passing, you may be familiar with his face, is one of the famous and lauded anti-racism activist Herman Owsley. Now, he passed away after a short illness at the age of 79. Now, of course, these libations that I'm making now are two incidents that took place last year, in October 2024. That's because we haven't been on air for almost a year. It might even be over. No, it's around exactly a year, because it's September I thought I was going to come back. So it's over a year. But Herman Owsley, he founded Kick It Out, which was this really powerful force inside British football to get rid of racism, and it campaigned and it brought in. If you talk about people like Gary Lineker, you talk about the works that they're doing, which addresses racism. Well, a lot of this is because of networks and relationships that were founded through the Kick It Out. It was later called Let's Kick Racism Out of Football, the charity, which at the time was seen as, oh my God, why do we need this for? It's football, it's a sport. Why are these people so sensitive just because we're throwing a couple of bananas on the pitch when African players are playing, and we're kind of singing racist songs? They got to get a thick skin. Herman Owsley didn't have any of that, and he ran the charity for, like I said, 25 years, challenging that culture. And you can see now that there's been massive changes when there are racist incidents. Football clubs now do lifetime bans. They kind of like sometimes stop teams from being able to participate if they don't do enough to expel the racism. There's still work to do, but he joined the ancestors at the age of 79. It's also worth remembering that not only did he sit in the House of Lords as a crossbencher until his retirement, he also served as the chief executive of the Race Equality Commission. Now, of course, that was later taken on by Trevor Phillips, who dismantled it because, of course, he believed that we didn't need to have an institution, a national institution that dealt with racism in the UK, and he was rewarded. He was given the honours, as they call them. So he's now a Sir. But Herman Owsley, anti-racism activist, we remember. Okay, so this phase hopefully needs no introduction. This is the civil rights campaigner, Dr. Paul Stephenson. He's best known for being one of the leaders of the successful Bristol bus boycott, and he joined the ancestors at the age of 60, not 67, of 87, when he passed November 2024. Now, Elder Stephenson helped to rally thousands of people for the 60-day boycott in 1963 after the Bristol Omnibus Company refused to hire African or Asian drivers. Now, the success of this boycott contributed significantly to the creation of what became the first Race Relations Act in Parliament 2 years later. So you've got to remember, we often hear the story of civil rights beginning in America. We hear about Martin Luther King and the fantastic work that he did. We hear about the Alabama boycott, but we don't actually hear and not often talked about. It has improved now with museums and contributing to sharing this narrative, but we haven't heard much about the civil rights campaign that was here in the UK, led by people of African heritage, that led to changes in the law. This is when activism was actually quite productive, rather than being symbolic and just kind of like virtual signaling. Much of the activism in those days really put pressure on businesses, costing them money, kind of like costing MPs and politicians their jobs, leading to passing of legislation. So sadly, our Elder Stephenson passed away after a battle with Parkinson's disease and dementia. Yeah, all I can say is we remember. I've just seen another message come in. Greetings. This is from Mr. 43. Good evening, Dr. Toyne. Oh, hold on, let me see if I can get this to show. Oh, there we go. Yes, I forgot how to do this. Right. So good evening, Dr. Toyne. Glad to see you doing this community updates again. I got back from a holiday in Ghana a few days ago. Oh, well done. You're making me envy. I haven't been in touch with the motherland for a few years now, and I am missing that. You know, as a family, we try to rotate between the Caribbean and the motherland, just to kind of like replenish ourselves. And we haven't done that, so it's good to know that you are taking over that role for us and bringing in the positive energy. We're back. I'm going to try and stay to the end of this term. That's another 3 months, and try and do this kind of like every week. Sister Oleander should be joining us to kind of like help with these messages as well. And yes, just remember, yes, I haven't forgotten you, Weather 360. Thank you. But yes, it's a crazy time. Part of what's brought me out of retirement, and like I say, it's not being retirement. I've been working behind the scenes. Is that things have just gone so bad in the UK. The pressure on our community is so strong, and the lack of political education. What I'm seeing with so many of us not really understanding kind of like the scale of the problem. I felt that perhaps this program is needed. So thank you, and you know, it's good to have you with us. But let me keep going on. So where were we? So that was Elder Paul Stevenson. So we remember Elder Nadia Kataus, who joined the Ancestors at the age of 99 last year in October. Now, Nadia Kataus had a distinguished career as a singer and actor that began in the 1950s, and her work continued across several decades. Now, many of us will not be aware of her work, but it was groundbreaking at the time. Her theatre work included Jean Genet's play called The Blacks at the Roundhouse, which used the framework of a play inside a play to expose racism and racial stereotypes, while at the same time exploring African identity. Now, I'm going to try and find out a bit more about that, because I kind of do love these meta kind of like plays and kind of like films or TV series when they do this. But you know, you've probably seen this kind of stuff in TV programs where they talk to you as the audience member and break the third wall. And I had no idea that this had taken place you know, on the stage. So yeah, you know, so she's done a lot of work, not just theatrical work as well. On TV, she acted along Cleo Lane and Cy Grant, and she took a part in ITV's Freedom Road, which was a documentary with a concert format which featured songs of protest dating from the days of our enslavement and to the civil rights movement. So she had a long and distinguished career. She would broadcast to the Caribbean on the BBC Overseas Services, which later became the World Service that we've heard of. And as well as being announced that she was a reader in the literary program Caribbean Voices in 1953. That's a lot of work, a lot of giving back to our community. We remember. This one hurts a lot. We remember our brother Twilight Bay. He began his journey to the Ancestors on the 13th of February of this year, 2025. Man, he was a phenomenal brother. He was a father, an uncle, teacher, scholar, soldier. He used the term social interventionist. I first met him working alongside the brilliant Paul Abina, and I mean, what can I say? I met him before he passed at another passing of a dear friend's partner. And we were just talking. He had just recovered from illness. We were discussing the next stage in our journey as activists, as community workers. You know, what are we going to do? We're getting older. We're prone to more challenges with our health. And I remember having a really good discussion with him. His partner was there about not being on the front line as much as we used to be. And I remember him saying to me that we should now consider ourselves working like generals. So we're still doing the work, but we're taking the strategies and the lessons we've learned and sharing that with the community to empower and to help us not make the same mistakes. What can I say about Twilight? His work was brilliant. He was focused on addressing attacks not just on our community, but also those within. So it wasn't a case of just blaming the system and looking at white supremacy. I mean, he worked with, many people know he came from America, worked with some of the gang violence, the Crips, and over there. but he kind of also worked with young people in our community who are harming each other, you know, and so that's one of the things I really loved about him. You know, he really looked at the root cause of the problems, how it manifested itself, and wasn't frightened to do the difficult, dirty work, which is the stuff that kind of crushes our soul, but has to be done. What can I say? As a friend, I'm going to remember him forever as the general, like the social interventionist, who was an inspiring light that should never, ever be forgotten. I mean, I wasn't even able to make it to his funeral. I found out because I've been off social media. I haven't been on Facebook or WhatsApp and all these platforms for such a long time, like I said, almost a year. I've just missed so much information, and so many good people have joined the ancestors. So we remember. The next passing is to the man they call the Brixton Bard, Alex Wheatle. Alex Wheatle. Again, another brother, a lot of respect for. I can't remember when I last saw him. I think we was going to. No, it wasn't a play. My memory's starting to go now. But for those of you who don't know, he was an author of many books, including East of Acre Lane. He passed away at the age of 62 from prostate cancer. If you listen and sit down with him, he'll tell you, you know, his interest in writing came from his time in prison. He was arrested during the Brixton Uprising in April 1981, and he spent 4 months in prison during that time. He's one of the soldiers. But while he was there, he kind of like followed in the path of what Malcolm did. He read works from Cillard James, James Baldwin, even Charles Dickens, of course, Langston Hughes, John Steinbeck, Richard Wright. These are a few of the authors that he kind of like decided to read and learn from. And these books were given to him by his cellmate. Of late, he was, I say of late, temporarily, I've always been challenged. I mean, that he was immortalized in the self-titled episode Alex Wheatle in the Small Axe TV series, and I think that anthology was excellent. I mean, I know there's a lot of people critiquing it for not being perfect, and Steve McQueen perhaps not working with the communities with the respect that he should have done. But the work that he did there, I really I'm pleased with, because it's our history immortalized again. For next generations to learn from. So if you haven't or don't know much about Alex, please see if you can download that from the BBC iPlayer and just learn a bit of his story. I mean, I'm talking about the positives of his life. I mean, the other thing that we rarely discuss, because it's taboo, is that he also survived horrific child abuse while in care. And so one of the things that he did was became a voice for those young people who suffered abuse. And as someone who temporarily spent time in care while my parents were going through the tricky separation, I appreciate this. It's a very sensitive topic. No one wants to talk about being in a children's home, but someone has to talk about it. And when those people who face abuse, and yes, you know, the abuse is not, you know, we are talking about different kinds of abuse, including sexual abuse. God, I tie myself up in you know, with my tongue. We remember. Thank you, Alex. Okay. We also remember John Richards, also known as Big John. Now, he was born in Portland, Jamaica, arrived in the UK aged 21. I think he went to the United States first. He faced institutional racism from day one when he arrived here. He spent 43 years working for British Rail, and while here, he founded the clubhouse of the Leary Constantine West Indian Association. And that's where he played a pivotal role, helping to organise our community to protest against injustices that they suffered. And so he's one of many elders who kind of like, you know, good life, good innings, 98. But from the moment he was here, decided that, my gosh, this racism is just too mad. I've got to do something about it, and founded these spaces that we could sit and be normal and organise and reflect and strategize. So he joined the ancestors, and yes, we remember. Our sister, we remember, Gerlin Bean, joined the ancestors at the age of 85. Now, she was a leading light of the feminist movement for African heritage women in Britain. Now, many of you would have known of the organisation OWAD, which is the Organisation of Women of African and Asian Descent. She was one of the founding members, and effectively she became what we call a fierce and persuasive organiser, fiercely committed to empowering our community. She was also a founder of the Brixton Black Women's Group in 1973, and she helped set up Sabar Books as one of our first bookshops in Brixton. Now, she did this in the 1970s. Alongside that, if that wasn't enough, she became a guidance counsellor at Brixton College, where she became instrumental in securing creche facilities that allowed countless of women to gain access to further education. I could go on and on. I mean, prior to that, she helped establish the West Indian Parents Action Group, which provided nursery facilities and early years education for working mothers in Lambeth. An amazing now ancestor joined them at the age of 85. If you don't know about her, I certainly didn't. If it wasn't for the researchers, I've just find out. You hear about these organisations. I knew about OWAD. You know, you hear of some names, but you don't hear of all the names. So it's really important that we don't just forget them. You know, it's part of the reason why we do this program. So we remember. We just had another message. Greetings. Thank you, BCSG UK. What's the message? Thank you for taking up this challenge once again. The world we are living in needs your informed analysis as a way to open discussions that we otherwise would not have had. Brother Ajani in Bristol. Thank you, Brother Ajani. Yeah, I mean, just trying our little piece that we can do. We share it out there, whether people engage in these conversations now or they come back to these broadcasts in 10, 20 years time and learn what was going on and hopefully use that to pave a better way forward. I hope we do it now, but you just don't know where we are right now. I appreciate you being here, as I do everyone who joins. You know, we couldn't do this without you. It keeps energy going. You can hear I'm already tired, and we're in the first section. So I'm going to move on with the other libations. Thank you. And of course, those of you who are watching, listening, you are welcome to add a comment to the chats, put questions, comments. Let us know you can hear us okay. There may be a few technical issues. I'm flying solo today, so I'm looking at the screens all over the place, trying to get all the information, hit the buttons and stuff like that. So please bear with me. There'll be a few gremlins. But I'm going to go through as much as I can. Yeah, so I'm going to go to the next libation, which is we remember. Oops, I hit the wrong key. He says there'll be gremlins, and he does exactly that. So let me try it again. And hopefully, yes, there we go. We remember our elder Eleni Foster. There you go. She was a Croydon grandmother known by the locals as the Crystal Palace Hat Lady. She joined the ancestors at the age of 18. Now, if you need to understand why they've called her, well, she became a local legend after, and I'm saying this, she did this for the past few decades. She started providing homemade knitted hats and scarves for the fans ahead of Crystal Palace matches. So you can see the images there, and these are what she kind of like took time to knit. And then what she'd do is that she would make it to every single Crystal Palace home game where, you know, I think she would distribute them, sell them, whatever, all this kind of stuff. One of the things you have to remember, though, which made her extraordinary, is that she was doing this even though she suffered from some serious leg ulcers for the past 60 years of her life, and developed a serious condition that led her in severe pain and affected her mobility. So her doing this knitting and then reaching each of the single home games at Crystal Palace really kept her alive, kept her going, and people loved her. I think there was a crowdfunder even when she passed away to make sure she had a decent sending off. So we remember there's a lot of these local legends. I get really frustrated. We hear about it when these you know, these so-called celebrities, these media personalities pass away. I mean, and some of them are good. I mean, I noticed there was Robert Redford and a few of them who have kind of used their platforms and their fame to do good in this world. But there's a lot of them that are just insignificant. I mean, I'm not going to go into the one that they're talking about today. We might cover it. It might come up in one if you ask a question or something. This Kirk guy, but you know, we don't hear about the people who really matter, and that's those of us in our community who are doing that work without the fame and the glory, and they're doing it because it's the right thing to do. They're doing it without the reward. Those are the people that we need to honor. And I get really frustrated that we don't know their names, that we don't know their actions. And all I can do with this program is remember them in passing, remember them as they join the ancestors. But, you know, it would be so good if we could just please kind of reach out to them and just say thank you to them while they're still with us. Because, you know, sometimes, you know, some of us, it's nice just to be seen, just to be heard, just to be appreciated, to keep us going. Well, it's a long program. Let me go to the next. We remember, and this one is to our elder. Is it Natalie? I've got Nellie Louise Brown. My eyes are sights going. So I'm so sorry. So Elder Nellie was one of the oldest living members of those labelled the Windrush generation. She joined the ancestors in May this year. I can't give you much information there, but again, we remember. That's what libations is, right? We remember everyone. This is the important thing that we do as a community. We do it back at home. We just don't do it in the diaspora. And we need to honor these rituals. So let's remember Elder Clovis Salmon. Now, he was regarded as one of the UK's first African documentary filmmakers. He joined the ancestors at the age of 98. He's also known as Sam the Wheels. I found an image of him with these the wheels. I don't know if he sold these bikes or collected them and stuff, but it seems to be a nickname that stuck with him. But one of the things that we remember about him is that he filmed aspects of community life in South London, including the Brixton uprisings of 1981, the ones I was just referring to, that Alex Wheatle took part in. And it was really important that we had people who chronicled this. We often forget these histories. We often forget the successes we had and the losses that we experienced. Now, back then, you know, we didn't have mobile phones. We didn't have the same technology to record things. And if you tried to take a big camera out there, whatever, you'd get nicked, or, you know, thugs. And like, when I say thugs in uniforms would destroy them. So he used a concealed camera to avoid getting it confiscated by the police. And he captured scenes of overturned cars, buildings that were smoldering from flames, and often just captured the growing anger at the police tactics. I mean, they were brutal. They were attacking young, old. They did not care. It was indiscriminatory. We'll talk about Terry Gross later on, but I mean, you know, this is what he did, and he filmed that, and that's why we remember it, and that's why we saw it. So, you know, of course, Blood of Goran is one of the classics that we have from our elder. In fact, I'm going to talk about him in a few seconds. But yeah, we also remember Elder Clovis Salmon. Okay, next libation. This one, I mean, it's like Twilight. If I get emotional, it's because I know these people, right? It's like they're my friends, and I find out about their passing through fucking social media. Sorry about the language. I find out through social media. I'm sorry about the language. So we remember our elder sister Nefertiti. She recently passed away. I mean, she left the UK and she did the wise thing. She went to the Gambia, and you'll see in the image with our brother Menelik Shabazz, and of course he's recently became an ancestor. He's the director of Blood of Goran, what I was just mentioning. And yeah, she you know, she just recently just passed away, and I didn't know, you know, and my wife comes home and she tells me, and you know, and you've got to process all this stuff. She was a beautiful sister. You know, she was one of those spiritual like lights. She helped and guided and supported. Most of you won't know her because she wasn't the one who sought the limelight. You know, she was the one who just got on with the work, with the healing. And yeah, I'm going to leave it there. Sister, we see you, we heard you, we felt you. You've gone and joined your beloved husband in the next realm. We thank you for your work, and we remember. Okay, we've got another message in. I sorry about the language. I apologise. It's a lot. Greetings. Thank you for Africa One. This is Wulu. So glad to see you back. Is it possible to start at 7 p.m. so that Lib Radio listeners can hop from Brother Keely to you? That's not bad. It's 7 in half an hour's time. So when you say 7, is that 7 GMT? Give me a heads up. It's tricky, but I'll see what I can do. Or we might have to start before Lib Radio listeners. I'm happy to kind of find something out. Just that from, I'm back at term time. I start teaching from tomorrow. And so it's kind of difficult managing prep for lectures and doing this as well. But if I can either do it a bit earlier, so we finish just before he starts, or we do it, we'll see. If you can drop me a line about the timing, let me know in GMT terms as well. We'll see what we can do. We need to get as much information out there, and we need as many networks sharing this information as possible. In fact, one of the things we probably should do is a hookup. We've got the technology. Perhaps what we'll do, guest talk, right? Maybe, Brother he can join us. We'll see how it goes. I'm more than happy to work something else right now. But this is the first time in a long while. Yeah, we're going to iron out those gremlins. Give thanks. Where are we? Okay. Okay, next one. We remember, I don't know the sister. I'm sorry about the slide. I went on Facebook to get a picture of our sister, and I found this other passing from a good friend of ours, Sister Jim Dye, who's sharing this passing, and it's part of our role, our responsibility. So I just want to say we remember our sister Lucine Tasha Pinnock. I don't know much, but she has put out, good wishes to her children, the Pinnock family, the Welcott family, and everyone who's feeling this loss at this particular time. We support that. We remember. The next passing we remember is to our sister Pauline Burdett. Apologies for the typo in the slide. Been putting them all together from morning. There'll be a few other typos. We apologise. She recently just left. Join the ancestors. What can I say? She was a family friend. Sister Oleander used to, go out and rave with her. She was always full of joy, always full of life. She struggled a lot with the complications of sickle cell, but despite that, she lived life to the fullest. We went to a passing, which was a few weeks ago. An amazing woman. She's left family, children. We remember. We remember, and thank you for the joy you brought to us, Sister Pauline. Thank you for getting back to us, brother. So we have, it's Brother Katie's show is currently 5 p.m. BST to 7 p.m. So I'll process that offline and try and figure out the timings and see what we can do with that to try and avoid any kind of clash. Hopefully as well, even after these broadcasts, if I find it's a struggle and I can't, these should also be archived. So you should still be able to view the recordings of them. But of course it's nice and it's better for us all when we have the live interactions. It gives extra energy. And thank you for joining us this week. Okay, wrong button again. Okay, where are we? Okay, another one. This one I found out on Twitter. It came through notifications. I'm really on the platform, which is now branded as Toxic X. Our sister Akusa, she joined the ancestors. She again another an amazing spirit. She was an artist, a visual orator, a community activist. I knew her from her work addressing media misrepresentation to commemorating our history in ways that are respectful, educational, and also empowering. I don't know what happened. I just heard she joined the Ancestors. You'd wish that there would be a marking of these wonderful spirits who are transitioning. Perhaps I've reached an age where all my friends, family are just this is gonna keep happening. This is the new normal, right? I'll put my mouth on it. This is what's happening. But we remember Sister Akusia Bambara. I'm going to keep moving because there's so many, and we haven't even got into the news section of the program. So the next and the final libation is a tribute to our sister Sarita Domingo. I don't know much other than that her tributes have been coming from across the book industry, to who some of them are describing as a rare and radiant force in publishing after she passed away suddenly on Friday. Now, our sister most recently held the role of publishing director at Jacaranda Books, which is a publication that, a publishing house that many of you are familiar with, which supports the works and talent in our community. She only joined the company in May this year. Now, the publisher has actually published a statement saying that she's not just an amazing woman, but a profound loss to our team for the publishing industry, where she was regarded as a pioneering force. So, we remember. There were still more and more and more libations that took place over the last 12 months. I have just done my best to give you a snapshot of some of them. Of course, you are welcome to share any personal libations with us for when we return in a couple of weeks' time. And if anyone we've missed out, of course, you're free to share those details with us. Again, I apologize for the language. It just got a bit overwhelming going through all these names of people that I know and I care about, and who I feel like I haven't had a chance to say bye to them properly, whether in person, whether even through funerals. It's just a little bit overwhelming. But we're going to go into the next section of the program, which is the one we call UK News. And just a reminder, you're watching Legali's Pan-African Community News Update. If you are watching live, because I know this is recorded and you might be watching a recording, but if you're watching live, you're welcome to interact with us through Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, as some of you already are doing. So please feel free to do so. It's always good to have your energy. Let us know where you're contacting us from, how wide are we getting out there. And don't forget, of course, you can subscribe, you can like, and if you think this broadcast is useful to your friends, family, you can share it. We've got another message. Thank you, Sister Natalie, Grand Rising, long time family. Asha, good to have you with us. We're trying. We've never been away, just behind the scenes. Can out a lot of work. Legali is now involved in a lot of Pan-African issues, not just in the UK, but across Europe as well. We're working behind the scenes. I can't really speak on everything that we're doing, but hopefully in time it will become self-evident. We're going to go into the news section. We're facing some serious challenges. This is our small contribution, stroke archive, political education, whatever you call it. But like I said, it's a long program. There's a lot to go through, so I'm going to keep moving on. And so let's go to the first story, and let's start right at the beginning, because that's where we are. Where are you? Wow, it's 7:20. That's almost an hour. We're only trying to do this in 90 minutes. That's not going to happen. I'm going to try and go through as fast as I can, because I can't finish the program in 10 minutes. And I certainly can't do it in 40, but we'll try. Okay, so where are we? Right. So over 15,000 children, some as young as 4, suspended from school due to racist behaviour. Now, of course, we're talking about the UK. We're hearing news that many African parents who have said that they are now homeschooling their children because of racist behaviour and bullying in school. This is a serious problem. A record number of children across the UK are being suspended from school for this behaviour. The ages are ranging from as young as 4, but the typical age range is 12 to 13. Some of them are being suspended. We're hearing that they're using racist language, physical attacks, race hate vandalism, including offensive graffiti. They're using the N word to call each other. They're using the P word. I mean, it's just outrageous what's going on there. There's a rise in racism. It's if we look at the figures, they've raised from 7,500 in 2021 to 15,000. That's almost doubling in a single year. We haven't have figures in for this year, and I'm pretty sure that that's going to be just as terrifying. But that's something to bear in mind, what's taking place, that when we're putting our children into schools, they're not going into a safe environment. I'm not going to go all over the situation with Child Q. I'll remind you, not only is the violence coming from some teachers, from the management of some schools, because we know about the closing down of some of the programs at B6. So there's an institutional assault on young people, but also now coming from children, which these children are getting from their parents. I can't really go into this in depth, but please be careful. Another message. Thank you. We missed you, brother. We missed you too, sister. And thank you for letting us know that. It's good to hear. We are there. And, even if we're not visible, always doing the work. The next story is one of masked men. Now, this is going to lead up to a longer pattern of what's been happening over the last few months. You'll be familiar with them if you're in the UK, maybe not so for those who are outside. Now, this started not too long ago when the Metropolitan Police arrested 5 people after a group of masked men attempted to enter a hotel in West London, which was housing asylum seekers. Now, of course, these asylum seekers aren't coming from Ukraine. They're not coming from Europe. These are asylum seekers that are minoritized and racialized. And so what's happening is that in this particular instance, the men trying to get into this hotel, they were being housed, and they damaged security fences. 4 out of 5 of them have been arrested and released on bail, with one of them remaining in custody. I don't know if he's still there. But this attack, this constant gathering outside of spaces where asylum seekers, and remember, these are vulnerable people. Like, these are not people who are coming in just trying to migrate, and there's nothing wrong with economic migrants. These are asylum seekers. They're being faced by groups of masked men, of crowds who are threatening them, and they've done nothing wrong apart from trying to find safety for them and their families when they can travel with their families. I'm going to move on because I'm going to paint a picture of where this has gone to and is continuing to go to. And so for those of you who were around last week in London, you will know that Saturday, the 13th of September, saw at least 150,000 people march throughout UK in Stephen Yaxley. He goes by the name of Tommy Robinson now, but his name is Stevie Yaxley Lennon. What they call Unite the Kingdom March. And this is a march where he united the far-right racists across the UK. And in many ways, they've been supported by the political class, who have been legitimising this kind of rhetoric across the UK. What we saw last week was reminiscent of what I grew up with and my father grew up with National Front marches of the 1970s and 80s. I spoke about Paul Stevenson. I talk about the civil rights works that we did, but a lot of that's unravelling. I wish I had time to talk about what this Labour government's doing when it comes to immigration and how they're turning back the tide and ramping up draconian legislation to demonise migrants who come into the UK, reversing like policies which would call rule of law to actually make it easier to deport people and not give them access to justice. But that's on another level. What we saw last week was, and bearing in mind this is the anniversary of the racist riots across the UK that we saw last year, that we're now seeing mass demonstrations where people are coming across the UK, gathering in the metropole, and you know, peeing on pavements, threatening innocent bystanders, you know, attacking the police, and kind of like, you know, essentially being emboldened. And I say emboldened because there is little to no condemnation by the government or by any of the political class who have any kind of authority to make changes about this. We're seeing some ridiculous virtual signaling from Labour and the Lib Dems. I mean, I don't know if you've seen a picture of the Lib Dem at a recent gathering where they're flying the flag. We've got Keir Starmer and David Lammy and his ilk. They're all the Labour Party flying the Union Jack, saying we're going to reclaim the flag and stuff like that. We call it banal nationalism, but they're doing nothing. They're not even coming out and condemning this stuff as racist. It's outrageous. And like I said, you're seeing what's happening in schools. You know, those children are becoming adults. Those adults are being radicalized in the home. They're being radicalized through social media. And we're not talking about domestic extremism, which is another form of terrorism, which is really where we're seeing white supremacy on the rise, not just across Europe, not just across America, but also in the UK. So what we saw last week is just it's just like the tip of the iceberg. It's just like a temperature of what's coming further down the line. It's one of the reasons why this program had to come back, because we can sense it, we can feel it. I don't have any fear of these idiots who are marching. What I am worried about is the silence, the lack of condemnation from the political classes who are passing laws, repealing rights, making protests criminal in many ways. I mean, you know, if I said anything in support of Palestinian action, for example, I would be arrested under terrorism laws. You know, all these kind of things. This is what I'm really worried about for our generation, of course, the next generation. So, where does it all start? Well, like I said, it starts in schools, but it also starts in small acts of vandalism. Now, in this particular case, this is the Cherry Gross memorial. Now, you might see the image. The large amounts of white paint were tipped over it. This is, for those of you who don't know, Cherry Gross was a mother of 6 children. She was shot by the police during an early morning raid on her home in Brixton in 1985. And this is what led to the second Brixton uprising. Now, she passed away in 2011 at the age of 63. And this is as a result of the injuries that she received, which had her needing a wheelchair for the rest of her life. Now, I do recall the police making an apology, an unreserved apology for it. But this memorial, which is actually something that's supposed to be a lesson to say, look, we can't allow this to happen again, right? We mustn't let this happen again. Well, now it's happening again, right? People are damaging it. And, this is where we're at. The family have condemned this. But I'm going to extend this story to the next part, because this memorial was in Brixton. And in Brixton, you know, there was portraits put up to honour the Windrush generation, and they were vandalised. It's a strange story, this one now. I'm I don't do wrong and strong, and I've got to be very clear and careful how I frame this one now, because the portraits were damaged and they were clearly vandalised, and the police started looking for who it was. And it's is this racially aggravated criminal damage? Yes, and that's what the police were looking for. They said that this is someone who was arrested. They found someone who was arrested on racially aggravated criminal damage. But if you look at the image of the suspect, the image of the suspect seems to be of African heritage, and so the police are saying that the portraits weren't racially targeted. Now, this is a really tricky one, because there's this thinking that goes across the liberal elite and kind of like the bourgeoisie class, who don't really understand Afrophobia and don't even use the term, that we have something called internalized Afrophobia. We have a situation where people who are who are educated, or I should say miseducated, or indoctrinated into educational systems that make them hate themselves, that imbibe the rhetoric that comes from the Yaxley Lennons of this world, that what they can do is therefore start to see themselves and us as a community as problems. Now, I don't know the history. This guy could have had mental health issues. I don't know the situation. But I'm saying that if the exhibition, if the portraits were vandalized, and only those portraits were vandalized, then it is racially aggravated. There is something going on. It's clearly criminal damage, right? So that's why he's been arrested. But let's not be so quick to say that they weren't targeted because they were African. Yeah, let's not be so quick to run to that just because of an African doing that. We have seen many in that that Unite the Kingdom rally. There were some Africans who joined the white supremacists, the racists, in those marches against migrants. Okay. This has always been the case, that you're going to get some people from the group that's been targeted who decide that their best bet is to join the oppressive group, and they can sometimes be more extreme than the extremists. So yeah, that's that story there. Okay, so those portraits were about the Windrush scandal in many ways, and honouring the people who came. I really dislike the way that term is used to describe people of African Caribbean heritage. It really does my head in, but that's the term that we have. But what it can't do is hide the fact that the scandal, which was said to be being dealt with, hasn't been dealt with. It's still an ongoing problem. And I'm just going to give you a couple of stories just so you can understand the scale of the problem. So this is our elder George Lee, and he was a victim of the it's not even the Windrush, it's the Home Office immigration scandal. And we call it the Windrush scandal as if it's the fault of the people who were involved, but it wasn't. Now, our elder arrived in the UK from Jamaica in 1961. He was given indefinite leave to remain. This was stamped in his passport. But he took a job in Poland in 1997 where he was teaching. And he stayed there for more than 2 years. He technically breached the terms of his status, and he was refused entrance back into the UK. Now, what you've got to remember is that he had leave indefinitely to stay. And so he had to fight just to get back. 28 years. And, what's going on? Why am I having to convince you that, I need to come back to the UK? This is my home now. So he struggled to convince them. And, I still don't even know if to this day, if that case has been resolved. But at least the Home Office is actually saying we recognise that this is a problem. And now, with a so-called Labour government, which is, because it's not a Labour government, it's just a neo-Tory government, but it's a Labour-branded government, there's potential that these one-off cases may be sorted. Not the majority, just these one-off cases that get media focus. And that's why we're adding to that. Another similar story you might have heard of is a case of Hannah Dankwa. Now, this is an elder. She's aged 81. She was stranded in Ghana for 4 months after being denied entrance into the UK. And the reason why I want to share this one as well is because the way that, again, I say I can't think of any word other than Windrush. And I love the fact that our elder, Professor Gus John, has come up with a term, the Windrussification of African history. He calls it Windrussification. So all of a sudden, everyone from the diaspora, so everyone in the Caribbean who's come to the UK, so whether it doesn't matter if you're Trini or you're Bayesian, it doesn't matter where you're from, you're Windrush. And if you're Windrush, you're Jamaican. And so what's happened is a very simple narrative which wipes out our individual identities, right? It's a very clever trick they've done, and we use the term. So what we don't recognize is that actually this scandal, the Home Office Windrush scandal, doesn't just impact African people from the Caribbean, it also impacts those who come from countries that were known by that diverse term, the Commonwealth. And so, like I said, our elder Hannah Dankwa travelled to Ghana in April. She was refused entry into the UK because they claimed there was irregularities with her date of birth on the documents. She was unable to return to England, and she's got cancer. But despite this, she needed treatment. The Home Office claimed that her case wasn't enough. Now, there is good news in this particular case because the the Labour government has actually now set up, they've appointed a Windrush commissioner, a guy called Clive Foster, and he intervened. And because of his intervention, she's now finally been able to return home to her family. Now, I have spoken about this on a video I made when I was one of my walk and talks along the canal. I'm not really confident with my first viewing of a first interview with the Windrush commissioner. So the test is going to be in the pudding, and so I want to see what else he does. I'll give him, this is one good mark. Someone has been able to return back. Let's see if he's consistent. Let's see how forthright he is, or he is dealing with these issues, or is he just another Lammy? Is he just another tokenistic African person who's got a nice fancy title, but when it comes down to asking difficult questions, breaking like policies and getting them rewritten and rechanged to bring justice for our people, that he's nowhere to be seen. So let's see what happens. But credit where credit's due. Well done, Clive Foster. If you are responsible for having a good result on this, please help out with the other case that we just spoke about, and look into the backlog of cases where what's happening, and I don't have time to go through this, that so many of us are dying before the compensation happens. That's another program in itself, where many of us and our elders who are entitled to this compensation, whose life has been destroyed, the quality has been reduced, our status, our mental health status, everything has been damaged by this disgusting scandal, are now waiting, and essentially joining the ancestors before they actually get compensation, and sometimes they don't even get compensation. So I'm going to move on to the next story, because I'm talking about, in that situation, a group of Africans with Caribbean heritage, and those who are coming from the continent, and those of us who have issues to deal with, linked somewhere to the topic of migration. My dad was an economic migrant. He came from Nigeria. If he was still with us, no doubt he'd probably be facing some of these kind of problems. My wife's, her mother came from St. Lucia. They would be facing, she would be facing some kind of problems if she was still with us. We talk about those issues, but what about my generation? What about my children's generation? What about those of us who have been here for a long time, who were born here? Well, I want you to understand that the problems don't just stop kind of like, with migrant, the ones who came here, but it also impacts those of us who are born here. And this new report has shown that we are 4 times more likely to face homelessness. And when I say 4 times more likely, more likely than people who are racialized as white, European people, we're less likely to get social housing. This is the results of a 3-year research product by academics who said that ethnicity affects a person's risk of homelessness. Now, we know this for a long time, but it's sometimes very good to have the reports out there. I haven't had a chance to read it. And as with all the reports I'm going to share with you today, I haven't had the chance to read it. It's just impossible. And I will get back to my nerdy self, where I'm reading everything and then communicating that outwards. But right now, just giving you a heads up, it's a 3-year research project by academics at Heriot-Watt University. They found that even controlling for factors such as geography, poverty, and home ownership rates, it is ethnicity, which is really having a detrimental effect on the risk of a person's homelessness. And that's really key, because if you think about what happened during COVID, where people were saying, and I say people, I'm talking about the state. This is when Boris Alexander Johnson was prime minister, and what's his name, Tony Sewell, making his sewage report and stuff about disproportionalities, and they were saying that no, it wasn't racism that was leading to disproportionate levels of African people and Asian people dying during the pandemic. No, it was just, I don't know, just bad luck, right? There was other kind of factors. We now know that actually that's a load of nonsense, and again, it's racism. When I say ethnicity, I'm talking about racism. The report's lead author, Professor Suzanne Fitzpatrick, said there are long-term forms of structural disadvantage rooted in historic racism, which are impacting on risk of homelessness. But the data indicates present-day discrimination is also playing a role. We heard reports of really overt racism from private landlords refusing to house people because they're African descended, particularly if they're refugees, or imposing rules or restrictions on them that they don't impose on other tenants. So that's a quote directly from the lead author of that report. I'm going to move on because, again, long program. Final story for this section is that there's a report by the Runnymede Trust titled Reparations. And surprise, surprise, it argues that reparations are not only possible, but also beneficial for society, framing them as a necessary response to present-day inequalities stemming from slavery and colonialism. Now, of course, many people will argue, and I'm talking, like I say, many people, I'm talking about people on the right, the racists, they will argue that, well, no, slavery and colonialism has nothing to do with these structural injustice that we're facing, like homelessness, which I just spoke about, like the Windrush generation stuff, like the abuse in schools, school children are feeling. That's what they're going to argue. Well, the truth of the matter is, actually, we know that coloniality and slavery are direct impacts. There's inability for the British state to address its enrichment, its unjust enrichment through the enslavement and colonization of our ancestors, is what leads to this enduring legacy affecting everything throughout society. But that's me saying that. This report itself features expert contributions across various themes, calling for redistribution, repair, and the creation of a fairer economic model. Now, these are not arguments that I would make because I'm not really interested in the financial aspect of reparations. I'm interested in the justice. The justice means smashing the economic model. It doesn't mean, it means, it's not just about redistribution. It's much more than that. And I haven't got the space to talk about my views on reparations. But yes, how do we stop this from happening again? What I do agree is that it does advocate for policies that address these inequalities, suggesting redistribution, repair, and establishment of a national commission on reparative justice should take place. And I do vaguely remember that when Jeremy Corbyn was leader of the Labour Party, I think it was Dawn Butler. I'm not sure, because right now the reparations is being led admirably by our sister Belle Ribera-Diu. I probably mispronounced her name. I'm so sorry. I'm just tired now. But our sister Belle has done fantastic work on keeping that flame alive. But I remember during the campaigning for the election that there was a a national education system was one, and there was something about a national commission. I know our sister Esther Akua is also talking about things like this, a People's Parliament, commission on reparative justice. But I think there is need for something like this. And I do know, that there's the church is doing something, because I went to a couple of their events, but it's gone very silent. I've not received any emails from them, and I haven't followed it up. So again, if we're not keeping our eye on the discussion of reparations in this country, then what happens is that the supremacists do it, and the bourgeoisie class amongst us do it. So I think we also need to have, grassroots entrance and stakeholder status. We need to be looking into these issues, kind of like continuously. I'm going to move on. My voice is gone. I'm going to take a sip of water. Thank you. You are watching Legali's Pan-African Community News Update. Wow, it's good to be back. It's a long program. I'm still going to try and make sure it's under the 2 hours because, yeah, I'm going to do my best. If you're watching live, you're welcome to interact with us through Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, as others have done. It's always good to have awareness of you there and your energy to keep us going. I'm flying solo today, so please forgive me. There's a few gremlins and I'm looking all over the place. I've got these different screens and stuff like that. The camera's over there and I can't do that. And so I have to kind of like keep being all over the place. But it's good to have you in the room. Don't forget to subscribe, like, share, all that sort of stuff if you find this broadcast useful. The main thing is if you find it useful, just share it with people. That's it. I don't particularly care about numbers. I just want people who can actually, who don't understand what's going on and would get would benefit from a good overview, can actually watch this. So the next section is a review of politics around the UK. I'll try and keep this brief. Politics around the UK. Yeah, okay, let's go. Right, so I spoke about the mess that was United Kingdom far-right march last weekend. 150,000 people on the street. I'm not going to tell you all the racist things they said. There's no need. You don't need to amplify them. But what I will tell you is that Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the Conservative Party, is becoming, if they weren't irrelevant, they're becoming more and more irrelevant. And the big story around her right now on this particular issue is that she's refusing to condemn Elon Musk's call for violence. Now, Stephen Yaxley's kind of like a rally was adorned, and I say adorned, by the participation of one Elon Musk through a video call. And he went on this big screen and circumvented kind of like I won't say freedom of speech because that's the term they use in America, but circumvented kind of a public disorder legislation by not being on British soil. And he really tried to incite everyone to get into violence. And he started saying, look, you're in a situation here where you either choose violence or not. Violence is coming for you. You either fight back or die. That's the truth, right? You got to fight or die. And he said this, right? I mean, there's no doubt that he said this. Because he wasn't in the UK, he can't be accused of public disorder or right there, but that's what he was doing. He called for the dissolution of Parliament. He called for the government to be overthrown. Now, I don't want this particular government, but this is someone, from, Azania, South Africa, now living in America after having a H-1B visa. And he's now going around Europe and inciting and funding these far-right movements. He's a deliberate agent provocateur. And the fact that Kemi Badenoch, for all of our differences, I'm not conservative, I don't believe in the values, she continuously lies, she continuously disrespects the heritage of people from Nigeria. I've got no time for her, but she can't even just have a little bit of integrity and just say, look, that guy was clearly inciting violence and she shouldn't support that. That's the story there. I've got no more to say on this. The only thing I want you to think about is that in that rally, we had 150,000 people who, many of them, like I said, far-right movements, racists, involved in kind of like going around asylum-seeking hotels where asylum seekers are and harassing and attacking them, involved in the riots, the racist riots that took place last year. This is just talking about England. There's also been racist riots recently in Scotland. We saw them in Ireland. They haven't abated. I've been speaking to colleagues in Ireland, and the racism is still going there. And so despite all that, so we know that racists came together to have this rally in London. And the Metropolitan Police decided that they would not use live facial recognition technology on the streets to capture their information. Now, I am not a fan of live facial recognition technology. I'll be clear about that. I don't trust the police not to violate our digital rights. But they did use that same technology at Notting Hill Carnival. How do you explain that disparity? Because they're saying that there was no credible evidence or something, that they needed it. I think that's a load of nonsense. And I've already put in a freedom of information request to Metropolitan Police, and I should get a response back in 20 days from them. And it'll be blah, 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 blah. But the reality of the situation is that that's clear racial bias as far as I'm concerned, because I think that there's much more of a case that there would be violence and known racist propagandists at this Unite the Kingdom, or whatever it's called, rally, than it was at Notting Hill Carnival, which is actually a celebratory event for African Caribbean like culture. But what do I know? We'll see what happens in 20 days' time. Let's move on. So what is the effect of this silence of the politicians, A, either not condemning it, or B, supporting the racism? Well, what happens is that we find that people like Paul Ovenden, who served as a director of strategy in Downing Street and was essentially Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister's top aide, literally top aide, was found to have been sending messages across the Labour Party to colleagues discussing our sister, the elder Diane Abbott, in the most derogatory and offensive sexual terms. Now, of course, just didn't take place just now. This took place in 2017. I'll be clear about that. And now that the messages have been revealed, I think ITV News did that, he's resigned from his post at Number 10. But that's 2017. That's 8 years ago this happened. We saw the Ford report, which exposed this kind of toxic culture inside Labour. Starmer knew about this. I don't have a slide about Mandelson because people knew that Mandelson was involved with Epstein. They knew he was involved in this kind of stuff, and they still kind of like appointed him as the US envoy. But what about this, right? They knew about this guy. They had reports about this toxic stuff, and they did not get rid of him. In fact, they promoted him. And so not only is there something rotten at the heart of government under Keir Starmer, there's something deeply misogynistic and Afrophobic at the heart of the UK government. And just so you know, the kind of like benefits for these people who are Afrophobic, these racist people, Ovenden earned between 115 to 120,000 pounds a year. We paid that. We paid his salary. 115 to, that's £250,000, not quarter, that's an £800,000. Okay, trying to make it sound bigger than it is. 125 grand is flipping a hell of a lot of money for a racist, right? Anyway, he's resigned. Not that he won't find another job, because we're in a climate now where these people always find new jobs. But I say the racists find new jobs. What about their victims? Well, they're not going to, because what's happened now? Our sister Diane Abbott has been suspended again, the second time, after she stated that she stood by her earlier comments about racism. And I'm talking about this hierarchy of racism that affects African people more than other groups. Now, I've talked about that in earlier broadcasts and how clumsily written it was, even though she was speaking the truth, right? I don't like the way she expressed it, but she was right. She told the truth. There was no lies detected, right? She clearly isn't a racist. But let's be clear. The organisation that she was a part of, the Labour Party, certainly is. Because if they can suspend her for a second time, and now they're actively looking for a successor to replace her, what we're starting to learn is that this is about something else now. It's certainly to do about her ethnicity and her background, the fact that she's an African woman, but also there's something about her politics that the spineless leadership in the Labour Party right now just can't handle, and so they'll use anything to get rid of her. It's a double whammy, right? Being kind of leftist and socialist, and also kind of like being an African woman, seeing that she's disposable. So Ovenden can actually resign on 120 grand a year and find another job. But our sister, he's trying to destroy her legacy and her career. One thing I like about our elder, Professor Gus John, is that he's come out and he's written a piece. I can't read the whole thing here, but I put a couple of notes down in front of me. And he's saying that, look, what Starmer needs to do straight away, if he wants any credibility, if he wants us as a people to support him, and I don't actually think he does. I don't think he's a damn about African people, if I'm honest with you. He's got his clown next to him in the form of Lammy. He's got all his sellouts, kind of like, towing the line with it. He doesn't really care about Africans with intelligence and integrity and moral fibre. But if he did want our support, which I don't think we should give, then Professor Gus John, our elder, is saying that, one, they should restore the whip immediately. I've always hated that term. Bring her back into the fold. Second, defend her robustly and without equivocation against these attacks, because that's not been happening. She's been attacked, and we're not hearing anything from her. Did you hear a news thing, an interview from Starmer or press statement from Starmer saying those comments about Diane Abbott were outrageous, and there's no space like that inside my cabinet or inside my number 10, and we're not hearing anything like that. He also needs to prosecute Frank Hester for race hate crimes. Remember the guy who said that he would shoot her and she should be shot, because that's just like gone under the carpet. Like, we're supposed to have forgotten that this came from the Labour Party. He also needs to commit in his manifesto to accept the findings and implement the recommendations of the Ford report, because this is not a new problem. This is a legacy problem. He was so fast to jump down Jeremy Corbyn's throat about anti-Semitism, but he's done absolutely nothing when it comes to dealing with Afrophobia. Absolutely nothing. Anyway, let me move on. Okay, greetings. We've got another message in. It's from Shanti. Greetings. What's it say? So, do you think that our language should be adjusted to reflect the reality of our bondage in the West and East, from slaves, enslavement, to prisoners of war and plantations, to labour concentration camps? Brilliant question. Yes, it's a simple answer for that one. The longer we use the language of our oppressor and place ourselves as victims without agency, and our oppression as crimes without no perpetrators, then what happens? The next generation that comes up inherits those languages, and they have to do the work all over again. So sometimes you need to push forward. It's like, if you think about, I always use the example of people who are disabled. When they used to use the word spastic, and it became a derogatory term, and that was how it's seen. You know, young people call it spaz, and so they moved to disabled, and you know, saying that people are disabled, and now we recognise that people are, or disabled people, and now we recognise people are disabled, and so we know that society is disabling people, that people are normal, and they're born with, you know, kind of like, you know, different conditions, different level of able-bodiedness, and society disables them by not providing the resources for them to move. When it comes to crimes, we need to have that same level of sophistication. So one of the things that's always irritated me, and it's, I mean, you know, I don't think Legali gets credit for this, but, you know, I was always picky, as, you know, our organisation was very, very picky about this, about calling African people slaves. And we always argued that it should be enslaved. And one of the ways that we pushed the argument forward was explaining that, you know, what happened when you are the criminal, when you are, you know, criminal in charge of language, is that the badge of shame goes onto the victim. So if you think about, and I'm sorry about being very nerdy about this, but if you think about if someone's been murdered, so you have someone who's been murdered and you have a murderer. If you think about someone who's been raped, someone's been raped and there's a rapist. But when it came to slavery, you didn't have someone who's been enslaved. It used to be someone was slaved, someone was a slave, and someone was a plantation owner. The language was deliberate to make us not think in contexts where the perpetrators were the villains. And so that's why it was so important to move away from that idea that someone was born a slave. Do you remember that awful term? Oh, he was born a slave. Well, no one's born a slave. You're born free, and then you are enslaved immediately by a system. So the idea of having someone was enslaved was what a big thing. But I also use the language to reflect the fact that there are slavers. You know, I mean, they use the term slaver to talk about their ships, their vessels. So it's like, oh, that's a slaver. That's a slaving vessel. No, that's what I would say. It's a slaving vessel. But slavers were the people who were involved in slavery. They weren't plantation owners. They did not own our ancestors. They were criminals, and they enslaved our ancestors. So, but it's a very long argument. It's the same thing. And your quote there about shifting from plantations to labour concentration camps is very, very important, because if you think about plantations and you look at the works of Jane Austen and all these kind of like these what you call them, polite society novels, then plantations are these lovely kind of places where, you know, where you know, you have a few, you know, like Negroes who are toiling the land, but other than that, they are picturesque and gone with the wind and stuff like that. Well, no, they were forced. The word you didn't put in that is forced labour camps. That's what they were. Concentration camps are slightly different. They were forced labour camps. The people on there did not want to be there. So yes, for long story short, language is very important. And we have another message. Thank you, Emma. Thank you for the interesting news. A clarification: asylum seekers in hotels are mostly not Ukrainians. Ukrainians are classified as refugees and can work in UK and access the homes for Ukrainians. Thank you for that. And yes, I had to be careful. This is one of the problems with all the different terminologies. Asylum seekers and refugees, and they are different categories of people who are migrating. And refugees are escaping from violence, which is the war, and that's a slightly different issue. And the UK did create a plethora of different schemes where British citizens could open up their houses to these refugees and actually be paid to house them. I mean, so you know, for me, it's very difficult because I don't like using all these different terms. They're all just humans. And the fact that people are creating different schemes based on people's ethnic backgrounds or their national identities is the thing that I find very problematic. But it is very important to understand that in these debates, and I should know better, that actually we have to be very mindful with language. So I do appreciate that. Okay, let me move on with the section we call World News. Oof, I don't think we have that much, even though there's loads. And because if I went on about what's going on the other side of the pond, would be here forever. I've done it again. Okay. Okay, World News. Okay, there we go. I want to start off with we covered this story in the past. This is the story of the murder of our sister Agnes Wanjiru, who was killed in March 2012. We know her body was found in a septic tank. I think there was some kind of corrosive acid inside there in the grounds of a hotel in Kenya. And it wasn't that far from a British Army base. And then, you know, once that happened, we started hearing all kind of stories and propaganda. And she was, part of, like a woman of the night, and all kinds of silly statements trying to attack her credibility. The bottom line is that she was murdered. And everyone in the region believes, I say everyone, obviously the majority of people in the region believe it was a British soldier. Now we know, 13 years after her death, that there's a suspect, and the Kenyan court has issued an arrest warrant for him. And his name is Robert James Purkis. Now, you might have not seen that face on British media. He was a former combat medic and an infantryman, but he is the soldier who faces extradition to Kenya to face trial for the alleged murder of our 21-year-old sister, who was also a mother. I had to share this with you because you might even know this guy, right? There's been no big fuss about it because, of course, it's only an African woman, right? It happened, some 13 years ago. Why should anyone care? Well, we care, right? And it's really important. In fact, what I should have done is create a wanted poster for him. I know that the British government is moving to make to put a statute of limitations on crimes by British soldiers. Part of it is motivated by trying to exonerate soldiers who were involved in what they call the Troubles and the violence in Northern Ireland, where there was abuse by British British soldiers, and they want them to escape justice. The families there are upset. The other part of it is to squash any claims about the abuse that British soldiers committed during colonial times and after colonial. We've never really been after colonial times, and cases such as this. So yeah, I just want to share that with you. There's so much more I can say on this, because some of you will know that I was involved in investigating war crimes against the Land and Freedom Army in Kenya, and Keir Starmer blocked my efforts to get them arrested and prosecuted. In fact, in the end, I did get some of them questioned under caution by the police, but it took me years to get that done, and most of them died before they could face justice. So let's hope that doesn't happen to this one. Let's hope someone who knows Robert James Purkis can actually help contribute, so he can just he have his day in court. And if he's innocent, then he'll be innocent. He'll be convicted. He'll be found innocent, and then we can find the real person. But if he's not innocent, then we can find justice and some kind of peace for the family of our sister Agnes Wanjiru. Couple of messages in. Thank you. This is from Shanti. Thank you. Starmer expresses allegiance to the Davos group rather than the British parliamentary system. I haven't heard him do it in person, but I know from his actions, yes, he has. But that's another discussion for another day. That's probably in politics section. And your other comment, I stand corrected, forced labour camps. Yeah, sorry if I sounded a bit, I wasn't trying to undermine you. But yeah, they're forced labour camps. It's the quickest way or it's the most accurate way to recognise them in what they were. They weren't plantations or slave plantations. I mean, that's that compound is a disgusting term. Well, thank you. we move on. Okay, so there's a new report that's come out. It's entitled Stereotypes About Africa in Britain and the United States, and it's been put together by an organisation called Africa No Filter and the University of Bath, and they've interviewed, I think, 1,000 odd people, and they're asking them about their thoughts about Africa now, and they've looked at the responses and they've analysed it, and they found that actually, when it comes to Africa, the most common comments are still dominated by these ideas of wildlife and nature, and describing the continent as hot and dangerous and inhabited, and African society being linked to corruption and instability or poverty, whilst Europe, in contrast, is associated with, surprise, surprise, modernity, architecture, pleasant landscapes, plantations, right? What else do they use? Stability, prosperous, it's important just to understand that these ideas are still circulating around the world and that we still imbibe them. I mean, this was quite an extensive piece of research. Again, I haven't had a chance to read it. It's called Stereotypes About Africa in Britain and the United States. You could probably find it if you're on Google. But Dr. Adam Hahn, the lead researcher, said it's not just about what people think, it's about how their thoughts shape what they do. And this is including their willingness to buy African products or engage with African cultures. If you think that Africa is simply about corruption or just wildlife, or it's dangerous and uninhabitable and all these kind of things, then actually you're not even going to consider the idea of going there for a holiday or buying products that are purchased there, built there, or any of that kind of thing. You just see it as this other death land, this other space out there, and that has to change. So it's an interesting piece of research. And one of the things that has led to that and kept that situation going is the Mercator map. And if you can see the image here, you can see what's what you see from the headline is that the African Union has actually joined this campaign, calling for the widely used Mercator map to be replaced with one that more accurately reflects the size of the African continent and South American countries. And this is, kind of like what we're seeing here, something better, because the Mercator map, which was created in 1569, severely distorts the land masses, with Greenland appearing the same size as Africa, and it clearly is not. The countries whose sizes are overestimated by the Mercator projection are mainly European countries, with the European continent placed at the centre of the map, reflecting its perceived position in the world at its centre. I don't know why I didn't find the other map. I should have done that, because there's the replacement map, which is actually also spun upside down, which makes it much clearer to see what's taking place. So when we see these maps, we have a distortion of the size of different continents. We think that Europe is bigger than Africa. We think America, and this is wrong. These images are completely wrong. But the problem about these maps that we're seeing is that they subconsciously impact people's views of the world. And since humans have this habit of equating size with importance, many Western countries believe themselves to be better, right? Because bigger is better. And of course, the opposite is true when it comes to the global South. There's, if you're unaware of these truths, then you can always perceive that they're bigger, they're better, they're stronger. Therefore, they can't be challenged. And so it's good that the African Union is calling for this map to be replaced with one that accurately reflects the size. I'm sorry, I should have actually provided the alternative. I don't know why. Completely oversight. Now, I said I wasn't going to talk much about this. This is an ongoing thing. I think right now, I think today, I saw it yesterday, there's going to be some kind of nonsense event to try and turn this character into some kind of like folk hero across the United States. But this story, is really something that happened before his murder. And it's about how the journalist and academic Dr. Stacey Patton has been targeted ever since she was put on the professor's watch list in 2024. Now, the watch list is an invention of Turning Point USA, and Turning Point USA is the child of the deceased Charlie Kirk. Now, Charlie Kirk, as many of you will know, has espoused several, well, he is a white supremacist. He was a white supremacist, and he has espoused many racist comments. And anyone who's actually criticized the narratives that he espoused and others like him espoused were targeted on a digital hit list for daring to speak truth to power. And she has said that once her name went up, the harassment that she experienced was excessive. She received numerous racist and hateful voicemails and emails that threatened all kinds of violence. The university where she worked was inundated with demands that she be fired. In fact, the university was so concerned about her safety, they offered her security in case she was attacked. Now, since then, because she was added to that list in 2024, we now know that Kirk has been murdered by a European male. I'm not going to get into all of that. But what I will get into is that across America now is that there's this toxic discussion about freedom of speech, where actually saying that the things that Kirk uttered was racist, or saying that MAGA, the Make America Great, that's the slogan used by Trump's supporters. If we're saying that the MAGA supporters are exploiting his death to attack social justice causes, it's getting people fired. I think what's his name? Jimmy Kimmel, the comedian, had his show cancelled. There was another one as well who had his show cancelled. I mean, I don't want to label that part because that's not what it's about. This is a Pan-African program. But the point is that we're saying be careful out there. Even me saying this now could actually put me up for target by these white supremacist crazy people. And that's just life, right? But the reality situation is that we are in a strange scenario where critiquing racism, sort of like, kind of like supporting what they call Antifa, which is anti-fascist movements, can actually now see you as someone who could lose their job, can see you as someone who's lose funding for any initiative that you set up. And this is not just something that is existing in America. This is something that's now come to Europe. So be careful out there. I mean, I'm saying all this stuff, and I work at university, and I know how these things could be weaponized. It's just like if I support Palestine, which I do. If I say that what's happening in Palestine is a genocide, it has been a genocide from day one. That can now get me fired, even though the United Nations and genocide scholars have been saying this for time immemorial, even though there's a case in the International Court of Justice. It's a dangerous time right now, which is why this program exists. So I'm going to have to be careful with my words. I have to be very accurate with my words. And all of you had to be so likewise, especially those of you that work where you're public facing, because you cannot trust anyone now to have your back when the racists come for you. That's the one thing we should be able to understand from politics right now, is that what they call the left has been coward, and their moral credentials have been blown. Anyway, I'll leave it there. Be careful. Okay, this is the last section. We haven't got much in this part of the program. Sorry. This section is called Being Positive. Normally, I like to add events and stuff. I just haven't had the time to do that because I've got a couple of stories there that's something you might be interested in. Just a reminder, you have been, and you are, if you're still watching online, Legality's Pan-African Community News Update. We'll be finishing in a couple of minutes. So if you're watching live, you're still welcome to interact with us through Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, whatever it is that you're using. Don't forget to subscribe. I'm going to try and keep this going for the whole term. Like, share if you find the broadcast useful. And yeah, let me get started. So the first story is this one about a new digital platform that's aiming to transform health outcomes for African patients. And it's called the Health Action Resource Platform, HARP. It's a free to access interactive platform. It'll be supporting healthcare organizations. It plans to bring together data metrics with which healthcare providers can use to share and compare and contrast NHS performance data across major health condition outcomes. I don't know much about it, but hopefully the online resource will allow users to identify and understand the scales of disparities. So I think that's part of what it's about there. I haven't checked into the backgrounds or the owners of the system. So of course we need to make sure and do due diligence to make sure we safeguard our communities against the abuse of our data, make sure that our digital rights are protected and we're not subject to algorithmic violence. But if this is what it looks like and it's deliberately trying to find out where these disparities are taking place, and we've heard about them when it comes to cancer, to maternal deaths, this could be positive news. So keep an eye, watch the space. The next story is about Ethiopia becoming a leader in the electric vehicle revolution. Ethiopia became the first country in the world to ban the import of gasoline and diesel vehicles effectively in early 2024. That's last year. And it's now led to increase in what we call EVs, or electric vehicles, with Chinese brands like BYD becoming common sights. Now, many of you are thinking, well, what is this really good news? Well, actually, yeah, it is. I mean, I'm more interested in us developing our own electric vehicles on the continent. But it can start with importing Chinese brands, reverse engineering and learning from them and developing something that's homegrown. So this is a good news. The government aims to have 500,000 EVs on its road by 2030. It's really important though to remember that we're not the cause of these climate change problems. We're not the ones that are polluting the atmosphere. That's not on us. And it's weird to see Western nations that have caused the most damage to the planet now reversing on net zero targets and actually going back into drilling and kind of like causing more environmental damage, whilst we're seeing the nations that have been at the forefront of recycling, of like trying to be as ethical as they can when it comes to the environment in their practices, are now investing in the technologies that kind of like will help. I don't know about reverse some of the environmental damage, but stop it from getting any worse. But this is a good news stories, and well done, Ethiopia. The country is focused on building the necessary charging and supporting infrastructure. Anyone who knows me knows I have an e-bike. I'm kind of a supporter of this kind of like initiative. Yeah, there we go. Okay, we have a message in. Greetings, Afrifinka. Just saying greetings to you, Toyin. Good webcast, etc. Thank you. Good to have you with us, and thank you for the kind words. It's nice to have those those familiar voices to reassure us that the work is still meaningful and helpful. Trying our best. Okay, the next story is one of did the slide? Oh, I did it again. That's me. Okay, that and that and then that. Okay, I'll try and fix this by the next time we do the program. But I don't get respite. Sometimes I can only set up the program literally on the Sunday. I lose the whole day while setting everything up. But this is the last story for this week. Good news, and this one is about the African pride in the Rwandan what's it called? The Real World Championships. So it's the UCI Real World Championship, the 2025, which is starting on Sunday. So I think that's today, right? Yeah, okay. So Rwanda was confirmed as the host of the championship in 2021 when a call went out to the continent's 54 cycling federations. And so now it's starting, right? And there's going to be a championship. They began planning, selecting, preparing young riders to ensure the best possible African participation. There's going to be a dozen African cyclists perform at the top level. And so we're just kind of having a big up there. And I say this, and if I had the time, and I can only apologize for this, it's like there was the Black Unity Ride this year. I think that took place like a month ago, and unfortunately, it's the first time in I think 3 or 4 years I just couldn't go this year. I was just inundated with work. But I heard it went off. It was beautiful. Thousands of us cycling across London. I'll do my best to be there next year. There are so many good news stories. There are so many good things that are taking place. I just don't have the time to share them with you today. Went to see a play on Friday, what's called a Black Power mixtape. I kind of wasn't happy with the ideology behind it. It was too shallow. That's because I lived through the history, but I loved what they tried to do. The performances were amazing. It's kind of like a soap that was branded by African, politics. Like I said, I have reservations about the politics, but it's worth checking it out. It's worth supporting the cast. Like I said, the performances were excellent. It kind of covers a lot of our history in it, but it's only on the surface level. I haven't had a chance to see much. There was the Africa, what was it called? Oh God, it was at the Akala Theatre. Oh, my brother Femi done this amazing play, Africa. It's got a number after it. It's gone, and I should have really put these on the slides. There's another play. I can't remember the name of it. Femi Efalojua. If you type his name in and you type in African, you type in Akala Theatre, you'll get the name of the play. It was a fantastic play, politically on point, performance, everything was there. There has been some great works going out there. There was something else at the Stratford Theatre a few months ago. Of course, we could talk about the films like what's that Ryan Coogler film, Sinners, and that scene, that amazing scene. There is good news. Culturally, we are doing a lot. We are on a resurgence, but politically around the world, the violence that we're facing and our preparedness to deal with that violence is waning. We need to up our game, and that's kind of what this program is also about. So I'm going to try and bring good news as well, but this is really a political program to make sure that we're aware of what's happening and that we think in a certain way and we help others think in a certain way so that we can minimize the harm and organize our defense so that we don't just survive, but we also thrive. So I'm just going to close and say thank you for being with me on this ride. I know it's been a long time. I can't believe it's been a year. As ever, I'm going to thank our researchers at Sister Angie and Brother Colin for contributing, and others who sent stories to us. For those of us who have been taking care of our business when it comes to libations and honouring our now ancestors, because that's a really important part of the work that we need to do. There's also our community journalists, Sister Melissa Sigodu, Nadine White, Sinai Fleury, as well as presenters. I mean, we have them. Their jobs are under threat. I think we lost Melissa Sigodu from her role at the Daily Mirror, and she's still doing this amazing thing, which is called, oh my God, my brain's gone. I subscribed to it. I can't remember the name of it. It's going to irritate me. You can subscribe to it's a blog. Subscribe to it, whatever it's called. Toyin, that's going to really frustrate me. She's got this amazing blog. So even though she's not working for the Mirror, she's still doing the work. She's still supporting our community. There are others doing that work. Find them, amplify them, put some shekels in there. I don't even use the word shekels anymore. I've got to stop there. Put some money in their pocket so they can eat, so they can pay for, put the roof over their head, because we are under threat right now. We're losing journalists. We're losing activists. We're losing scholars left, right, centre. You probably know about Professor Hakeem Adi losing his job. This is not something that's contained. It's not stopped. We're hemorrhaging talent, let alone what's happened to the program at Goldsmith with our sister who's lost the Black British History program there. We're hemorrhaging like the people who are doing the work for us. If you've got any ideas or any news you want to share with the program, of course, you can let me know for the emails. The next broadcast is going to be on Sunday, the 5th of October. I was going to do it at 6 p.m, but I'm going to look at the time. So I might start it early at 5, or I'm going to try and see if I can synchronize so that we don't clash with what's going on for our brothers in the US. So if you want, you can kind of like have a transatlantic conversation, kind of like listening to both of us at the same time. Let me see, there's a couple of comments before I close, and I'm going to close. So, okay, we have Afithinker, Asher, thank you. Yes, we'll do our best to make it so. And thank you for joining with us. And we have Brother Howard and message Brother Dr. Toyin. Do you think it will get to a stage where black people have to walk in groups like we did back in the 50s and 60s? Yes. My honest answer is I don't think we're there now, but I think, yes, I think we will. I think the violence that's coming, we're back into that situation where we don't even know if our neighbors are on our side. And I think that the white supremacists are emboldened. And so the violence is going to come at us from different spaces. So I think the way that women have always had to have their backs when they're walking late at night and text each other to, to tell them where they're going and when they're coming back. And, I remember as a man, I never understood it. I walk where I want to walk. I don't care if it's not, any time of night, I never really worried about that until I had to kind of like listen to sisters to understand, well, it's not just sisters, but women go through living under a patriarchal system and the violence is real for them. Well, now that's been turbocharged. It's a mixture of like this misogyny, but it's also Afrophobia. And because it's been emboldened at every level and there's no hope, I mean, I could talk about what's happened with the Your Party debacle, this new left party, which has imploded. We have no friends. We are on our own. And so I think that whilst right now I'm not saying walk the streets with fear, I don't really believe that. I do believe that we have to now strategize to make sure our children don't go out by themselves. I mean, a lot of them are staying indoors and that's not healthy for them as well. They need to have the courage to step outside, to traverse the world, but do it in groups. We can't be coward anymore, but at the same time, we can't be naive. The police are not our friends. The Metropolitan Police has done some good work, and I can't believe those words are coming out of my mouth. They have, I remember people were angry with me, and I don't like Rowley's approach to many things, but they did go aggressively for all the toxic ones, and they've got rid of them. That doesn't mean that they've cleared the house, doesn't mean that their recruitment is any better. The police are still not our friends as an institution, but I'm saying that there are some changes that are taking place, but we don't have the Rastas. The Rasta community was our Black Panther movement, which protected us on the streets. We don't have that anymore. We let them down. That's another discussion for another day. Long answer to a long question. Yes, we do, but don't go around with your head bowed. Walk with your head up high. Okay, Sister Natalie, Howard. Great question. Yeah, it was a great question. Thank you. And sorry for the long answer. I didn't even think about it like that. But yeah, if you're having race riots one year, 150,000 people being emboldened to walk through London the next year, you're having a police force that is not using facial recognition to identify them at the same time, and you're having them use that technology on our people at Notting Hill Carnival. You're having MPs being kicked out while racists are rising. If you're having white supremacists in the UK being commemorated and their date of birth being commemorated into a national holiday, the world is not right. And I haven't even gone into the violence in Sudan, the violence in Congo, the violence in Palestine. The world is not right, and we have to be careful. So I'm going to close with a final comment from my sister Natalie. And she says, wow, Asante Sana for your thorough research and commitment to the global community. Dr. Brother Toyin, we appreciate you, Asher. Asher, likewise. It's not just me, like I said, and Sister Angie, Brother Colin, all of you have contributed towards this. The news comes from our sisters and brothers doing this journalism work. Yeah, but I appreciate you being here. And we'll do what we can. It's going to be a bumpy ride over the next 12 months, and we're going to survive it. So with that, I'm going to say walk good, be safe, stay informed, tell others. I'll see you in a couple of weeks' time. And may the ancestors continue to guide and protect us. Ashe.